Presenting The Crom by Alex Lehangrim. Book 1, A Summer's Night. Chapter 1, Under Moon and Through the Storm. It all happened long ago, longer now than that when it was written, in the golden age of myth and legend, when kings and queens held court and governed their lands, all under the watchful eyes of the empire. In a place far across the sea, where the winds blow south, over the hills of the southern borders, gracing the walls of Argonath. There in the province of Chirac, home of the farmlands of which rolled the great Nova Pandoa River, its current running strong and unpredictable, winding through the landscape with wild energy, spanning nearly 20 miles across before splitting out like veins, carving its way through the vales into Lake Manreni. Just east of Raven Rocks stood the towering high hills, looming like quiet sentinels overlooking the lands to the south, acting like a barrier going eastward and merging with the walls of Argonath. There, deep in the bowls of Bellswood, nature's chaos and beauty blended perfectly with coiling branches dangling amongst columns of trees, where every flower clung to any space they could find, forming intricate networks that seemed almost alive, as if nature had meticulously arranged each petal. Bright colours burst out everywhere, pinks, yellows, purples and reds filling every blank space of nature before decaying into spindly white twigs devoid of any life. Wednesday, 20th of 1st Spring. 1462 of the Fourth Era. The woods lay in blossom, the past ice left by winter was melting away, and every critter big and small whispered in the night air, like a song waving through the marsh to the tops of the ancient trees. There, high atop a lonely hill, stood a little distant house, aged and forgotten by time. Inside, a woman in her mid-40s sits in the dark, huddled in front of a candle for warmth as the night drifts, her breath visible in the cold night air, each sigh a silent echo of her desolation. The woman lived alone in life, and had little to no money, no luxury of the sort or a steady job, which made everyday living a constant challenge, most recently after the death of her husband. Food was often scarce, and she struggled even to buy enough to keep herself going. She never received visitors, and her days blurred together in solitude. The house reflected her circumstances. It was mostly empty, with very few possessions left inside. The furniture she owned was worn and broken in places, with paint peeling off the chairs that looked like they belonged to a different time. Only a couple of chairs sat in the corner, both showing clear signs of years of neglect, and an old, plain table stood by the window. The window itself was shattered, its jagged glass catching the light in disarray. The table was stained with dirt and grime, evidence of many a day without proper care. The house lacked comfort, warmth, or any sign of recent use. No curtains hung over the window, just ragged pieces of fabric that barely kept out the cold during the night. The walls, if they could be called that, were bare and stained, with peeling paint revealing patches of mould underneath. Every corner of the space seemed to echo her loneliness. It was clear this was a place where she simply existed, rather than lived. The lack of warmth in her surroundings seemed to mirror the void in her heart, as memories intertwined with the lingering sense of bygone days floated through the dusty air. Very few people knew about this place, believing it to be the house of a crummy old witch tampering in dark forces, which only added to the feeling of alienation and isolation. Despite all that, the woman, firmly known as the widow, would emerge from her house on rare occasions to walk the staggering 15 miles to town, wandering the streets of Dunwyn and taking whatever work she could find. But it wasn't enough. Despite the widow's strenuous efforts and kind nature, she was only rewarded 3 bronze pieces or corcoles a day, which wasn't even enough for a small loaf of bread. Locals would stay clear of her, as rumours of witchcraft echoed around the community, leading to many stares and feelings of spite, with an endless cycle of darkness punctuated only by the flickering flame of her lone candle during the nights, a tiny beacon amidst a sea of neglect. Each day felt the same as the last, with lonely nights spent at the window, watching the seasons change, and the stars roll across the heavens like fireflies heading east to escape the horrors of the world. Tuesday, 21st of Summer's Night, 1462 4E. One evening, the widow was on her way to sell the only trinket worth of value in her possession, a golden locket with a silver gem in the middle, which her husband had given her on their wedding night. This locket held an immeasurable sentimental value, serving as a constant reminder of the love that had once blossomed. In her heart, however, the idea of selling it felt like selling a piece of herself, as if she was severing the ties to the man who had been her anchor, her best friend, and the sole purpose as to why she needed to make ends meet, as on this day the gods smiled upon her. As she walked through the streets, she couldn't help but feel like an outsider, enveloped by the darkness creeping around her as whispers drifted around the neighbourhood, lies and accusations passing from person to person, ensuring the widow remained a figure shrouded in mystery, an enigma clothed in the veil of shadow. Upon exiting the pawn shop, the woman grasped the 16 septrums in her possession and looked over her shoulder, as the city was known for its high crime rate and discontent among locals. Feeling danger at every corner, the widow pushed through the streets, her eyes darting around nervously as she passed by 3 guards by the inn, whose gaze felt cold with ill intentions. As she stepped into a quieter street, shadows thickened. Out of nowhere, 3 rough-looking men ambushed her. They leapt from hidden corners, blocking her way. She tried to turn back, but it was useless. Her efforts were met with brute force. They shoved her into a dark place. The assault was quick but brutal. She was beaten mercilessly, blows landing hard on her face. Calling for aid proved in vain, as these were the same 2 guards she had passed earlier. When she finally came to, her hands were trembling as she tried to compose herself, but then it hit her, a sharp, searing pain in her abdomen. It was as if a fiery blade had sliced through her insides. Her vision blurred, and chills ran down her spine as she feared the worst. Her mind spiraled with fear. Her body went cold, and for a moment she thought that all had been lost. Desperate, she went from door to door, begging standbys who pushed her off at the mere sight of her. Her desperate cries echoed through the quiet street, piercing the night with raw pain. Her strength began to wane. The sharp, ragged screams of anguish had finally caught the attention of a passing physician, who was making his way down the cobbled alleyway. With him was his assistant, a young girl of no more than 14 years old. She had short, uneven hair that seemed to be cut in a rush, and her clothes were nothing but tattered rags and makeup that made her look elderly to unfriendly eyes. The doctor wasted no time. His sharp eyes quickly took in the bloodstains on her battered frame, along with the swelling and bruises that marked her skin. "Easy now, my dear," he said softly, his face softening with pity. The woman looked at him with wide eyes, her breath ragged and uneven. She was clearly in terrible pain, her body trembling under the weight of her injuries. The doctor's heartbeat quickened as he realised the extent of her wounds. Carefully, he began to examine her, checking for injuries hidden beneath the dirt and blood. His fingers felt her ribs, trying to find broken bones. But as he leaned in closer, the widow suddenly clasped her hands on his collar. "Please, don't let her die," she said in between breaths. The doctor's face suddenly went pale. His eyes widened with shock and concern as he realised the shocking truth. Underneath the blood-streaked rags and torn fabric, her belly was swelling with movement. A heavy silence fell over the scene, as they realised the widow was 6 months pregnant. The doctor's mind raced, trying to process what they had just discovered. The street lamp flickered above, casting weak light on this grim tableau. His assistant was sitting down with the woman, cleaning her wounds. "She's going into labour," she said, concerned as the widow began struggling with contractions. "We can't leave her like this." The doctor looked over his shoulder with a quick glance. "Help her up. We'll take her to the house. Quickly now, before the guards see us." The doctor took the widow back to his house, which served as an operating studio for the sick and needy. His assistant rushed to get some supplies, while the doctor helped the woman onto the table. For 5 agonising hours, the people of Dunwyn could hear the screams coming from the widow, echoing like a pack of wild wolves howling against the full moon. The moans were like ghosts bleeding through the empty streets, and many people became deathly afraid. Hour by hour, the unsettling sounds seemed to grow more frantic and desperate, reverberating through the town like an ominous warning. The screams became so vile that they truly became an unnatural part of the landscape, and the once quiet neighbourhood was overwhelmed by an unseen dread, as the doctor did everything in his power to deliver the child safely. The atmosphere in the room was tense, weighed down by the palpable uncertainty as a storm rolled in, lightning shooting like iron rods of white fire. The assistant tried to comfort the woman, praying to the gods to ease her pain. Her hands trembled, filled with compassion, as she wiped the widow's brow over and over, murmuring soothing words in an attempt to provide solace during this harrowing experience. Hours passed, and the storm drifted apart, revealing a beautiful full moon dawning on the horizon, shining through the window and casting a silvery light across the room. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity of struggle, the baby was born, a healthy baby girl with bright golden hair that seemed to glow under the moon. The doctor did everything in his power, but to no avail. The widow was beyond aid. Her final words would stay with the assistant for the rest of her days. "Don't let them take her," the woman wept. "Protect her." Tears ran down the assistant's eyes. "I swear," she replied, holding the woman's hand, her voice barely above a whisper. Then silence. The widow had succumbed to her injuries before she could even hold her firstborn child. In that moment, as the echoes of the widow's plea hung heavily in the air, a profound sense of responsibility washed over the assistant. The gravity of her promise cast a long shadow, intertwining her own fate with that of the tiny infant resting beside her. The world outside the delivery room continued to spin with its usual indifference. Still, within those walls, time seemed to pause, allowing the assistant to comprehend the weight of the situation they faced fully. A sense of failure washed over the doctor as he sauntered over to the window, supporting his weight on the sturdy table as the rugged surface under his palm grounded him in the moment as he gazed into the night. For all his training and experience, some outcomes remained beyond his control. Outside, the rain had stalled. "Time of death, 11:10, he said glumly. The words hung in the air like a tender embrace, filled with heartache and regret that echoed through the stillness of the room. The doctor was exhausted and had to sit down on the edge of the table, resting his weary body as he took a moment to collect his thoughts. Meanwhile, his assistant, having just washed off her old woman makeup, carefully cradled the newborn in her arms, admiring the way the soft light filtered through the window, casting a delicate glow on the child's hair, making it seem almost ethereal. She weighed about 9.2 kilograms and was 61.5 centimetres in height, a little miracle amidst the darkness. It was a moment tinged with bittersweet joy, for while a life had been lost this night, light had shone through and began anew. As she opened her eyes for the first time, the blue iris shimmered like bright sapphires, full of innocent promise. "She's beautiful," said the assistant with a soft smile, her eyes sparkling with a mix of joy and sorrow. In that fleeting moment, she found a purpose in the little girl, a symbol of resilience and a reminder that all was not lost, a glimmer of hope amidst the raging storm. "What will become of her, now that the mother is gone?" she asked. It was at this point that the doctor's face became hard, his hands began to shake, and a look of terror filled his eyes. He stood up and faced the window, as if to find someone out there watching them. The faint light streaming through the glass illuminated the growing shadows in the room, mirroring the heaviness in their hearts. "You know all too well of what will happen," he said grimly, his voice carrying a hint of truth. "The law of Dunwyn persists. Word will have spread now about her birth. Soon, the guards will come looking, and if anything, the fate of this child will be no less than all the others. I fear the worst is yet upon us." His words carried a dark truth. "We can't let that happen," said the assistant, horrified. "She's so young. We have to do something." The gravity of the situation bore down on her, making her feel as though she was rooted to the floor, struggling to comprehend the dreadful implications of their predicament. The doctor thought long and hard. His thoughts almost seemed to cut him like a knife, while his face contorted. "The only thing we can do now is an act of mercy," he said, laying his hands gently on the window pane, feeling the chill of the outside air creeping in as tears ran down his cheeks. "May the light of the 9 bring their blessings upon her, and pray she may find peace in the land eternal." "What are you saying?" "The world is grim," said the doctor. "Who now hears the cry of the innocent if the gods have fallen silent? I'm afraid this is the only solution. The child must be cremated, effective immediately." The weight of his decision bore down upon him as if he carried the full burden of the world's injustices upon his back. Shocked by his words, the assistant held the baby up to her shoulder, cradling her gently, as if the warmth of her body could somehow shield her from the impending darkness. "I can't believe what I'm hearing," she said, shocked, backing away from him. "You speak of murdering an infant." "It is for her own good, Selina," said the doctor with heavy words, his voice laced with sorrow, as he walked over to the furnace to start it up. "Too many children have suffered at the hands of those heartless barbarians. I don't see why the fate of this child would be any different." He turned towards Selina, desperation roaming through his eyes. "You must understand. Once the guards arrive, there will be no way out of this. If anything, she will likely be brought before him, and all his ruthlessness will rain down upon anyone who stands in his way, getting to this child. So many lives taken, so much innocent blood spilt for the sole benefit of a tyrannical madman. No, this is the only way I can grant her mercy." "Carvita!" Selina exclaimed, her voice trembling as the impact of his words lingered in the air. "You speak of murder, yet you call it mercy. No man, not even you, has the right to extinguish the flame of one so young, one who has yet to see the world for what it can be, what it truly was. A place of wonder and beauty before the darkness came from outside." "It will be quick," said the doctor with much regret. "At this age, she will be unable to feel any pain." Gods forgive me. The fire was set alight, crackling to life with an ominous hunger, reflecting in the doctor's eyes like a mirror of the chaos lying before them. "No," Selina argued. "No, you can't do this. Sir, please, I beg you to reconsider. What if she was your own?" "Enough!" cried the doctor, angered, and slammed his hand on the table, spooking the child. "You think I want this?" the doctor barked. "You think I want to become like those monsters out there, plundering and slaughtering the innocent, spreading their wrath like a poison while we stand by helplessly?" So many lives taken. How many more will fall at the mercy of the sword, forced to serve a lifetime in iron, only to beg for survival? You know well as I the laws of that wretched devil. Countless families ripped apart, men and women slaughtered or forced to crawl on their knees like dogs, all for the spoil of a blood-sucking warmonger. If the child stays here, the guards will come and take her away, both of you, just like they did your mother. These were dark times indeed. For the past 50 years, the people of Dunwyn had lived in turmoil, with legions of barbarians seizing control of their dominion and spreading their warfare throughout the southern lands. But it wasn't always like this. This period of suffering and strife can be traced back to a time when Endora was a thriving realm, rich in resources and culture, characterized by vibrant communities that flourished under the banners of peace and justice of the old religion. Streets echoed with innovative ideas as scholars gathered in grand libraries, sharing knowledge that inspired breakthroughs across fields, from medicine to architecture. It was a time when the boundaries of human understanding seemed to expand daily, with thinkers challenging existing beliefs and paving the way for groundbreaking discoveries. Marketplaces hummed with activity, the sounds of trades bustling across the vast sea as artisans displayed their crafts, showcasing textiles that shimmered under the sun and pottery painted with intricate designs. Storytellers wove tales of heroes from legends long past, enriching the cultural tapestry of a thriving civilization, with every story acting as a thread that weaved together the intricate identities of the people. Festivals celebrated the changing of seasons, a time for joy and reflection. Each celebration, steeped in the customs handed down through generations, served as a reminder of the empire's rich heritage. Communal feasts brought families and neighbours together, allowing them to bond over shared traditions and culinary delights from various regions, each dish carrying its own story and adding flavour not only to the food, but also to the community. The sense of camaraderie was palpable as laughter and music floated in the air, weaving bonds that would outlast even the wildest storms on the horizon. However, a shadow had begun to rise in the east, as conflicts among the provinces started to erupt, festering like a poison as greed and ambition unravelled the threads of unity. In 2579 of the Third Era, prosperity had begun to fade, with whispers of dissent growing louder amongst the people as the peace treaty between the world leaders failed to innovate, leading to a slow decline in the imperial government, and with that, cracks formed in the foundation of society, signalling a troubling shift in the hearts and minds of the once loyal subjects. This internal strife sowed seeds of distrust among the populace, as ordinary citizens found themselves caught in the crossfire of rival factions, each claiming to represent the people's interests, but instead fueling the flames of discord. The very leaders who had once stood as pillars of strength and justice throughout the centuries had turned against one another, their minds twisted and bent on conquest, spreading the fires of war to all four corners of the world. This opened the door for even more conflict, as the empire found itself at war with the Gwaron of the Animal Kingdom and the Ainur of the Icelands. Yet still, none of them could have predicted the uprising of a fourth faction and the rivalry between humans and the barbarian clans from the west. Sieging with ravenous hunger, these ruthless barbarians sought to control all the land's resources, led by a tyrannical warlord and his legion of loyal followers known as the Horde. Displaying little to no mercy towards mankind, and employing tactics that were both effective but inhumane in the eyes of the imperial gods. It was a time of significant upheaval, where alliances shattered, and the ideals that once shaped the very foundation of the empire seemed to dissolve, as other forms of religion plunged the once harmonious realm into a chaotic battleground of bloodshed and terror. By the beginning of Fourth Era, the war had ravaged for over 1,400 years, until the fires eventually reached the southern borders, and the town of Dunwyn soon found themselves caught in the crossfire, as 400 Horde soldiers began occupying about 40 kilometres worth of land and resources, cutting down the trees to the west and building machines of mass destruction, all in the name of conquest. This turmoil not only claimed the lives of countless innocent people, but also disrupted the delicate balance of nature that had thrived for centuries. The once vibrant flora and luscious hills were mercilessly ravaged as forests fell to the axe and saws of industrial innovation. And by 1412, the tranquil sounds of rivers became overshadowed by the clanking of machinery and the cries of countless families. What had once been a bustling metropolis spanning nearly 35 by 23 miles, with fishermen, butchers, tailors, and blacksmiths of diverse cultures inhabiting its streets, became more and more barren over time, a hollow shell of its former self. To make matters worse, the Horde soon began breaking into people's homes in the middle of the night to confiscate their children, ranging from newborn infants to toddlers and teenagers alike. This vile act was not only to decrease man's population from their dominion, but to break his spirit and morale. Many of the children were sent off to the north to fight in the arena, while many others were sold as slaves to high-ranking officers, all in the name of the most fearsome and ruthless of barbarians to have roamed the borders. The supreme Horde commander, Zologaz, also known by Jnelchika by his men, meaning Iron Shield. He was second in command of the Horde, a high-ranking officer commanding legions of warriors to the north and southeast. His powers sieged throughout the lands, and in his domain, no one challenged his word. He despised the human race, but more than so, he wanted to see them crawl at his feet like the dogs that they were. His brutal tactics and vile nature earned him the notorious nickname of Mulgar, the Black-Hearted. Arrogantly proclaiming himself as a high ruler, Mulgar demanded that all young women between the ages of 16 and 25 be brought before him, where they would serve as pets or servants for his troops, and in return, the people of Dunwyn would be left in peace. Those who refused to obey his laws were locked up, while others were skinned alive and thrown to the hounds. Selina was only 5 years old at the time when the Horde came and took her mother away, leaving her uncle to raise her in secret. The night air, once filled with the sweet sounds of nighttime crickets and distant lullabies, was punctuated by the heart-wrenching screams of families being torn apart, and by the end of the year, the city had fallen silent. No longer would you hear the laughter of youth, no sibling squabbles and parents gathering at night to share stories with their families. Most residents would work tirelessly in dark, dangerous mines, digging through stone and soil to extract precious minerals in order to make ends meet. Many struggled just to stay alive, living on little more than scraps of food, with some families relying on tending to the soldiers returning from war, caring for their mounts, preparing meals, or cleaning their gear in hopes of earning enough to survive for just another day. This precarious existence took a toll on the townsfolk's spirits, as each day blended into the next, a relentless cycle of hardship and survival. Others could barely feed themselves, often left to starve in the streets, resulting in crime waves festering throughout the city, while others would meet a brutal end if they failed to meet the soldiers' demands. Visible wounds of hunger etched on their faces painted a somber picture of desperation, as parents scavenged and bartered with what little they had to avert graver losses. In the end, Dunwyn had become a ghost town with an eerie stillness that felt like an open wound that would never mend. The once bustling streets appeared deserted, filled only with the dull reminders of a once lively community, now shattered by grief, leaving behind only a memory of what it once was. To keep his niece out of harm's way, Selina's uncle dressed her up in rags and applied makeup, disguising her as an elderly woman of 64, whom he claimed to be his long-term assistant. This unconventional strategy was born out of necessity. The threat of violence and capture loomed over them at every moment, as the Horde had installed human soldiers from the east in positions of power, acting as spies and tax collectors, while maintaining a constant watch over the remaining citizens. By aging Selena in the eyes of the world, they hoped to circumvent the prying eyes of the Horde's enforcers. This not only demanded the uncle's creativity, but also required Selena to adopt behaviours and postures that belied her tender age. As a young girl, Selena spent most of her life in hiding, working alongside her uncle, who had become a beacon of hope amidst the darkness, helping those who had lost their homes and whose families had been torn apart by the Horde. They engaged in an unrelenting mission of kindness and survival, bringing food and shelter to those in need while keeping a low profile. Despite all this, Selena's spirit remained unbroken, demonstrating remarkable resilience for a child her age, and showing not just survival instincts, but also a compassion for others who had suffered similar fates. To this day, Selena remains the only young female in Dunwyn not captured by the Horde. But now, the fate of another has been thrown into the mix, and it was only a matter of time before history repeated itself. Midnight. As Selena placed the baby into a large basket like a cradle, her heart raced with a mixture of fear and determination, with the widow's dying words echoing in her mind as a moment of silence enveloped them, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the low crackle of the fire. "I'm doing this for her own good, Selena," her uncle said, his voice heavy with grief, the weight of his decision bearing down on him, each second stretching out like an eternity. He could see his niece's disbelief morphing into an emotional battle, a chaotic storm swirling in her mind as she fought against the inevitability of their circumstances. "What kind of world have we created that forces us into such corners?" she murmured as tears pricked her eyes. "The slaughtering of innocence, when we stand idly by doing nothing to prevent it. If Mother could see you now, falling into the shadows of those you claim to despise, vicious, vile, to become the very monster that took everything from us. Do you wish her blood on your hands?" The doctor clenches his fist. "You know I would never willingly let any harm come to those I've sworn to protect. To spill the blood of one so young would be immoral, a sin against everything we stand for. But what choice do I have?" "There is always a choice," Selena argued. "Don't make this harder than it already is," said the doctor. "I have to do what is best for our people, even if it means forsaking my oath and being thrown into the fire myself. I could never imagine what that monster would do if he discovered either of you. But if I am to protect my own, I will do what I must, even if it means giving the life of another. I can only pray the gods will be merciful. Here, give her to me. I will make it quick." In those quiet moments, the reality of maternal bonds began to unfold in Selena's heart. She pondered the depth of the widow's final words and the fierceness of a mother's instinct, recognizing how such emotions could transcend even the greatest obstacles. It was as if the widow's spirit had taken root within her, compelling her to act not as a caregiver, but a guardian against any darkness that could threaten the future. Selena jerked back with a look of determination. "I won't let you," she said sternly. The doctor shook his head. "It is the only way I can protect you." "Then I'll take her away," Selena barked and stormed off to her room. "Far away, where no one can ever find her." "Out of the question," the doctor cried and followed her up the stairs. "You are only 14 years old. It's a dangerous world out there, and there is no way you are capable of handling the responsibility of a child. Selena, please, be reasonable." "Then what would you have me do?" she cried out in a brittle voice, throwing her clothes on the bed. "Just stand by and watch her die." If not by your hands, then let her be taken away like some animal. You know this is wrong." She then stressfully picked up her clothes and started packing. "If there is any chance I can save this child from this life, I will take it, no matter what it takes." "Selina, please, listen to me," said the doctor, calmly taking her by the shoulder. "No, you listen," she snapped back, and turned with tears running down her face. "All my years, you've taught me to help those who can't help themselves, that together we can guide those who have lost their faith when all else is lost. You once said that in the darkest, the fires of hope will light the way. Why aren't you saying that now?" Distraught, Selina sat down on the bed, burying her face in her hands with the baby lying next to her. Teary-eyed, the doctor sat down in front of her. "I understand what you must feel," he said softly, placing his hands on hers. "I know you only want what's best for this child, but I can't afford to lose you as well. Not a day goes by that I don't think of your mother, how her shadow haunts me still, and all the times my heart grieves, wishing she were here with us. I never forgave myself for what happened, and I swore that I would do all in my power to ensure her sacrifice was not in vain, by sparing you from the same darkness." "And you know why I must go," said Selina softly, placing her hand gently on the baby's sleeping head. She knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, and the responsibility now resting on her shoulders to ensure the child's safety. But to go beyond the borders, to take those steps into an unknown world she herself knew nothing about, the pressure felt immense, like walls rupturing, revealing a vast, uncharted ocean where danger loomed at every corner. But no matter the cost, Selina vowed to honour her promise. With the memory of the woman's tear-streaked face etched in her mind, she envisioned a life filled with laughter, where the little girl could run free and grow. As she gazed at the peaceful face of the sleeping babe, so innocent and untouched by the tribulations of the world, her heart swelled with a mix of determination and trepidation. Selina's mind wandered to the myriad of stories. She had heard about the land beyond the border, a place where the weather could turn on you in an instant, where too many dangers lurked in the shadows, but also where new beginnings could bloom like the early spring flowers. Every anecdote seemed to carry with it a duality, revealing both the potential for peril and the courage of those who dared to venture. The fear of the unknown gnawed at her, an ever-present shadow whispering concerns about what lay ahead. Yet, it was paired with an equally compelling desire to protect and nurture this child, to give her a future that sparkled with promise rather than despair. After a long silence, the doctor embraced her, stroking her hair as he appeared to have come back to his senses. "So frail, yet a fire burns within," he said with a soft smile. "When I look into your eyes, I see the same strength and compassion she had, and I knew, from that moment on, no matter the distance, no matter how many miles may part us, in my heart, I know that the two of you will always be with me. You're right. No child, not even she, should have to bear the shadows of our mistake. By the grace of the 9, I swore to protect those in need, no matter how small. Now the time has come for that oath to be tested, even if it means giving up the one life that matters to me most, to save another." Selina smiled, tears in her eyes, as the two embraced, unaware of the man listening in the shadows. As the doctor had feared, one of the guards had followed them back to the house and had heard the whole thing. The news was then passed to his comrades, who later informed the sheriff, who, in turn, sent men down to the east to inform the horde captain. It wasn't long before said information reached the ears of a certain commander, who had been away for quite some time. Days came and went. Autumn leaves twirled in the air, falling to the ground like a patchwork quilt as the world surrendering to the cold. their vibrant colours fading into the earth, as though nature itself was taking a deep breath, preparing for the quiet slumber that awaited as the remaining warmth of the sun dipped across the horizon, transforming the landscape into an icy terrain. Friday, 29th of Frostmorn, 1462, 4E. Where branches full had once stood stark against grey, rainy skies, their quiet silhouettes cast heavy shadows over the town, humming a winter storm, signifying the terror that was slowly approaching. Citizens rushed back to their homes as the sound of iron feet marched through the snow-covered streets. The doctor was entering his house one late afternoon after supplying medicine to a low-income family. As he entered the kitchen, the front door burst open violently and 2 guards from the village stormed in. "What's the meaning of this trespassing?" he cried in anger, demanding an answer. But the 2 men arrested him without a word, clamping him in iron before dragging him outside into the cold. There he was tossed to the ground before a towering group of iron warriors clad in black and red armour. The doctor's blood ran cold as he gazed up in fear at the dreaded horde commander, Mulgar, standing before him. The barbarian stood as a titan, nearly 12 feet tall. His long, rugged beard was red as blood, covered in soot and grime, shoulder armour with spikes added to his immense size, making him appear more menacing, and on top of his head, a helm with the horns of a devil. The air shimmered with tension, thick enough to cut with a sword, as Mulgar gazed down at the doctor, his yellow eyes and blood-red iris drenched with disgust. "Search the place," he growled in a deep, jagged voice. From within the house, glass was shattered, rooms were turned inside out, and furniture was torn asunder. The doctor took a hesitant step backwards, compelled by an instinctual dread. "My lord, I don't understand. To what do I owe this visit?" Mulgar's eyes, sharp and feral, blazed with a fierce intensity, scanning the surroundings as if searching for weakness. "Spare me your pitiful blabbering," he growled. "You know well of what I seek." The doctor's face turned pale. "Please, O great commander, I do not know what you mean." "Oh, I think you do," Mulgar's voice boomed, thick and gravelly. "A little birdie has informed me that they had seen the good doctor walking about with an assistant these past 9 years. And not just any assistant. A young female, no less. Clad in rags and makeup, no doubt to keep her off our scent, as it was." Mulgar then grabbed the doctor by the throat so tight, all the blood rushed to his head from his iron grip. "Did you really think this little deception would go about unnoticed? I have eyes and ears at every turn, far beyond the borders. Some are even willing to spill the beans for a small price, and when asked, kill whoever I see fit." "Please," the doctor pleaded as he struggled to breathe. "I know not of whom you speak. I only live to serve the horde." Mulgar clenched tighter, and the doctor nearly lost consciousness. "Do not take me for a fool, old man," Mulgar grunted. "I've seen the way you treat your own, dragging them through the mud like the dogs you are, all for the sole benefit of suppressing those beyond your kin, thinking yourself superior, but no more." Mulgar released his grip, and the doctor crumbled to the ground. "You and your kind have failed to remember," he added, "that in these lands I hold stand above the lot. Here I reign supreme, and it is my will that is the will of the gods. So I'll only ask this once. Where is the girl?" His breath was so foul it could make you vomit. Every detail of Mulgar screamed power, from his muscles rippling under the leather and metal, to the scars that laced his arms and face, telling tales of battles fought and won. The hulking commander was not merely a warrior. He was a legend made flesh, cultivated through years of bloodshed and victory. Stories of his prowess ranged from near fantastical to horrifyingly real. How with a single swing of his massive blade he could fell the stoutest of trees, and how he had once defeated a bear so huge that many believed it to be a legend itself. Even the bravest among his warriors shuddered at the thought of facing such a formidable opponent. The doctor lowered his head. "My will is to serve thee, my lord," he grovelled, hoping he would show mercy. "I would never dream of deceiving you." Just then, one of the soldiers came out of the house holding a soft blue dress, which in the hand of a barbarian was but the size of a small tablecloth. "Sir, we found this in one of the bedrooms. It's a female, all right, but there's more. It would seem the doctor here was hiding more than just one." Mulgar grabbed the dress and held it up to his nose, which he inhaled, and his eyes were filled with sinister glee. "Well, well," he grinned, and gazed down at the doctor, who was shivering to the bone. "Do my senses deceive me, or do I detect the scent of a fresh young newborn? My master will be most pleased." Mulgar smelled the dress yet again. "Ah, a little girl. How quaint. So, not only are you a lying weasel, but you managed to slip this one under our noses as well. Ha! Tell me, how many more did you manage to pull from beneath us? 5, 10, maybe 20 or so? Or perhaps 100? A valiant effort for a weasel. But alas, your recklessness will cost you dearly. I'll make sure of it. Gather the villagers and search the area. The child must be hidden here somewhere." The horde spared no time. Within the following hours, every man, woman of Dunwyn were dragged out of their homes to the town square, where later each house was ransacked and turned upside down. But there was no trace of either Selina or the child. Mulgar's patience was wearing thin. "I grow weary of your games, old man," he growled. "I'm not one for forgiveness. It's only a matter of time before we find them, wherever they may hide. Now spill it. Where are the girls?" "Please," the doctor whimpered in agony. "I don't know what you're talking about, I swear." "Lies," Mulgar screamed, and with his sword he chopped off the doctor's left leg. The villagers were horrified. "You're trying my patience," Mulgar growled. "Each lie that slips from your tongue, I will strip this village, one by one, until you tell me where you're hiding them." When the doctor didn't reply, Mulgar grabbed hold of an older woman from the crowd and threw her to the ground, where he then began crushing her beneath his foot. "No, please, stop!" cried the doctor, and finally submitted. "You won't find them here," he admitted. "I sent them away, far, far away, where your evil cannot harm them." Mulgar sneered and was so furious that he pressed down on the old woman, followed by a heavy crunch. "You and your people will pay dearly for this treachery," his teeth growled with saliva, looking down at the doctor, his hand now holding the wound where the leg had once been. "Cauterize the wound, then throw him in the cage," Mulgar said. "I want him to watch this." For a moment, time froze, and the doctor felt the weight of his decision, as one of the soldiers pressed a burning hot piece of iron against the wound, before throwing him into a rusty cage. "Let this be a reminder to all of you who choose to dispute my laws," Mulgar announced to the crowd. "I shall not be deceived. For anyone who dares challenge my word, I shall smite thee with all my power. And there shall be a great cry in all the lands, one that has never been, nor ever shall be again. You will do well to remember that none can escape the might of the horde." Mulgar then took one nasty look at the townspeople, and his angry grin almost seemed to split open his lower lip. Send in the Grunds. At this point, the town's sheriff, responsible for calling out to the horde, stepped forth. You can't do this, he cried out. We had a deal. You swore that if I turned him in, you'd leave my family be. You cold-blooded slug! Mulgar turned with a red glance, and the man's head rolled onto the ground as blood splattered onto the crowd. I don't make deals with dogs, he said, sheathing his sword. Call them. One of the barbarians then blew into his horn, and shortly after, the doctor witnessed a raging herd of armoured beasts coming down from the west. Ferocious wild bears, with fangs sharp as razors, eyes pale as winter's ice, and manes black as soot. They ravaged through the town, killing everyone, including the guards, as the streets run red. Mulgar then turned to one of his men. This city is lost. Have the place wiped clean, and gather the men from the northern camps. Dunwyn will now serve as our base of operation, effective immediately. I sense that our friends in the east are getting ready to move out. Send troops to the mountains, have the scouts cover the east and southern borders for any spy patrols. We wouldn't want the Duke's men to stumble upon any sensitive information that might hinder our cause. Right away, sir, said the soldier, and mounted his wolf. Mulgar then turned towards the doctor, who was grieving, clasping his arms around his body as temperatures dropped. Let this be a lesson in humiliation, Doctor, growled the dreaded horde commander. Anyone who dares thwart my will shall suffer greatly. Know this, wherever the child may be, no matter how far they run, my troops and I will ensure a slow and painful death, even if it means burning down every last town that stands in our way. You're only evading the inevitable, Doctor. So tell me, where are they?